Hi, I'm Jessica Peterson, owner of Wild Willow Wellness and co-owner of Inside Edge Strategies and Design here in Helena, Montana. And today I want to tell you about the scale of permanence. The scale of permanence is used to assess and analyze landscapes for creating regenerative design. And I'm going to tell you about Yeomans' scale of permanence. He's the originator in terms of who developed the language for the system. However, we worked with Dave Jackie's scale of permanence, and so that's the one that I'm going to get into some more detail about. If you're watching this video today, you might be here because you're interested in the Sixth Ward Garden Park. Maybe you're interested in being a volunteer. You may also be here because you're taking the all-female taught PDC that's online, and if so, we're happy to have you. And then you may also be thinking about taking the women's PDC, and if so, please look us up and find it and decide if it's right for you. Now I'm going to tell you about P.A. Yeomans' scale of permanence. I think it's really important that we first acknowledge that Indigenous people all over the world have been practicing ways of framing landscapes and designing their landscapes. And there's a lot of references for that. It's beyond the scope of what I'll talk about today, but it's a huge interest of mine and one that's worthy of exploration. That said, P.A. Yeomans is credited with designing the initial scale of permanence. And he was a farmer in Australia and found that if you designed from the most permanent aspect of your design context, and then started there and moved down lower and lower to the least permanent and easiest to change, that ended up as being the best way to design a landscape that had way higher yields, was very fertile, and highly productive. It's been important that I tell you about P.A. Yeomans. However, it's not the scale that we actually use for the Sixth Ward Garden Park. And so I'm actually going to go into further detail by talking about Dave Jackie's scale of permanence. And so to give you a starter on what we're going to talk about, I'm just going to list the scale the way that Dave Jackie has it in his book. Climate, landform, water, legal issues, access and circulation, vegetation and wildlife, microclimate, buildings and infrastructure, zones of use, soil, fertility and management, aesthetics and experience of place. Now, I'd love to take you to the Sixth Ward Park so that I could show you some of the local information and how we made decisions about it using the scale of permanence. However, it's the solstice and we've had a big blizzard. And so what we're going to do is put some of that information just right on the screen for you. So with climate, remember you are looking at the least changeable aspect of your landscape. So some things that you want to think about would be your zone, like your climate zone. You would also want to think about annual precipitation and also how that precipitation is distributed over the course of the year. And then, of course, we're going to want to consider climate change and potential impacts on the community and on the landscape that you're working with. Now, when you're thinking about landform, you want to be looking at the slope on your landscape. You want to be looking at the general topography. You also want to consider the geology for the region as well as the site. And you also want to really understand what that water table looks like on the land. So the third landscape element in the scale of permanence is water. And what you're looking for when you're considering water is you're looking for first of all, the existing places that water is coming from. And secondly, you want to be understanding what are the watersheds that your landscape falls within, and what is the general flow pattern of those watersheds, and how is that interacting with your landscape. Number 3 would be potential pollution sources. For us in the Sixth Ward Park, an urban area, that was a big consideration for us. And then not last, but the most important with what I'm telling you right now is looking at flooding, potential flooding, looking at places where there might be ponding, and also puddling. And so you're wanting to really get a sense of the general patterns of water on your landscape. Your fourth consideration in the scale of permanence are legal issues. Now these can run a gamut depending on where you are. What you want to think about is your zoning, your wetlands. You want to think about controversial plant species. And also, sometimes there can be local or neighborhood association rules that you'll want to be aware of. So your fifth consideration is access and circulation. And in this case, you are looking at the current activity nodes in the space. Where are people already spending time? Where are things already happening? And then you also want to be looking at where your storage areas are. You also want to look at your access points. Where are bicycles able to come in? Where are pedestrians able to walk in? Where are they using? Are there trails that you're seeing through the area? Are you using particular pathways? And then where are automobiles able to get to? And lastly, you're thinking about your materials. Where are your materials being stored? Where might that intersection between your automobiles dropping off materials and where materials are be connected? Those are some of your considerations with access and circulation. Your sixth consideration is your vegetation and wildlife. And so with that, you're looking at a couple of things. You are looking at your existing plants and wildlife. And then you're also starting to observe and be aware of the existing ecosystem architecture. So that can be related to plant diversity, plant relationships that are already happening, relationships that are already happening between humans and animals and plants. And it also can be existing structures of those plants, whether they've been arranged by humans, by animals, or other aspects of our ecosystem. The seventh aspect of the scale of permanence is microclimates. And so with microclimates, there's a lot to consider depending on where you are. And so a few of the things to look at are your slope aspects. So there's going to be varying slopes on any given site. You also want to look at your sun, shade, and wind patterns for that space. And then last, you're going to look at your frost pockets. Where are there potential frost pockets that'll happen when it gets cooler outside? So number 8 is buildings and infrastructure. And so when you're considering the existing buildings and infrastructure for your site, you are looking at the buildings that are already there or are nearby. You're looking at the permanent pavement that's already in the area. You are checking for power lines, for sewer lines, water lines. You're looking at whether or not there's septic. And you also want to be considering the existing fencing. Number 9 in the scale of permanence is your zones of use. So in this case, you are looking at existing property lines. You're looking at current zones of use for water and for land. You are also looking here at the history of the use of the land and the potential impacts there that you can see right now. And then you also want to understand how the neighbors are using that land, and also just people that are passing by. And similarly, you would think about animals passing by, birds, that sort of thing. Consideration number 10 is your soil fertility and management. And so what you're looking for here are your soil types, your existing topsoil fertility. You are looking at any potential soil toxins. And then you also want to understand what that management history has looked like. So number 11 in our scale of permanence consideration, and our final consideration, and in theory our easiest to change consideration, is the aesthetic or experience of place. And so what you're looking for when you go in with your observation skills are looking for disharmonies. It would be visual disharmonies that you would pick up almost intuitively. You are also looking for outdoor rooms that are currently existing. You would want to understand with the arrival and exit what that experience is like visually, and so you'd want to practice going through a few times. You'd want to understand what is the current existing sense of place that's already there? How is it connected with neighborhood? These kinds of things. And then the visual integration of everything. And so all of these elements coming together, what is that like visually? And how does that feel when you're looking at it and all of those elements together? So that concludes my discussion of Dave Jackie's scale of permanence. If you would like to know any more information, feel free to contact me at insideedgestrategiesanddesign@gmail.com. You can go to our website at insideedgestrategiesanddesign.com. You can find us on Instagram. You can follow us on Facebook. And if you want to learn more about the Sixth Ward Gardens Park specifically, you can Google them and find their website. Thanks so much.